In the cobblestones of Prague's Old Town Square, there are 27 crosses, white and uneven, easy to miss. Tourists walk over them every day. Suitcases roll across them. Everybody on this square looks up in amazement to the Prague Astronomical Clock, but very few look down and see the crosses, and even fewer actually know why they are there. On the 21st of June, 1621, this place was not a square. It was a stage built for blood. 27 men, the leaders of the Czech rebellion, executed, one by one, over 7 hours, from 5 in the morning until noon, while the city watched. This is not a myth. This is what really happened when Prague Protestants threw the Habsburgs' councilman out of a window. And the emperor didn't leave it unnoticed. To understand the crosses, you have to understand the fire. There was a priest, well, more of a reformer, named Jan Hus. He was a rector at Prague's Charles University, and he had a problem with the Catholic Church, a big one. He preached for years against its corruption, against the selling of indulgences, basically paying your way out of sin. And he argued that Scripture, not the Pope, should be the final authority. The Church did not appreciate this. Hus was summoned to the Council of Constance in modern-day Germany, under a promise of safe passage. He went. He defended his views, and then, despite that promise, he was arrested, tried for heresy, and burned at the stake on July 6, 1415. His ashes were thrown into the River Rhine, so his followers would have nothing to bury, nothing to remember. They remembered anyway. Back in Bohemia, his followers, the Hussites, were furious. Hus wasn't just a preacher to them. He was becoming a national symbol of resistance against foreign, corrupt authority. That fury simmered for 4 years. Then on July 30th, 1419, a radical Hussite priest named Jan Hus led a march through Prague's new town. The target? The new town hall, where several Hussite prisoners were being held. Hus was a priest at the Church of the Virgin Mary of the Snows, a church that still stands in Prague today. And on that day, he delivered a sermon that would change European history. As the crowd approached the new town hall, someone inside threw a stone down at them. That was the spark. The mob stormed the building, grabbed the town councillors and judges inside, and threw them out the windows. Those who survived the fall were finished off by the crowd waiting below with spikes. Today, if you ride the Prague metro, you can get off at a station named after him, Line A, Želivského, a medieval revolutionary immortalized in 20th century concrete. This was the first defenestration of Prague. And it worked, in the sense that it triggered exactly what it was meant to: full-blown revolt. What followed was nearly 20 years of brutal religious civil war. Bohemia against the Holy Roman Empire, Protestant Hussites against Catholic Crusaders. Jan Hus's peasant armies, armed with modified farm wagons and early firearms, repeatedly crushed professional knights in full armor. The Catholic Church launched 5 separate crusades against Bohemia. All 5 failed. But wars end, and the Church does not forget. Fast forward nearly 200 years. The year is 1618. The religious divide in Bohemia has not healed at all. It got worse. Bohemia is now part of the Habsburg Empire, ruled by a Catholic dynasty out of Vienna. But Bohemia itself is religiously mixed, with a strong Protestant Czech nobility that had won certain guarantees of religious freedom decades earlier. The new Habsburg leadership is being seen as chipping away at Protestant rights. The new emperor, Ferdinand II, is a zealous Catholic and believes that his divine mission is to eradicate Protestantism from his lands. Czech Protestant nobles are watching their religious freedoms being strangled, and, much like 2 centuries before, they are getting furious. On the 23rd of May, 1618, a delegation of Protestant nobles marched into Prague Castle and confronted 2 Catholic regents of the King Ferdinand, Jaroslav Borita and Vilém Slavata, plus their secretary, of violating the kingdom's religious rights. The conversation did not go well. The regents denied it. Voices rose. And then someone remembered what city they were in. They threw all 3 men out of a 3rd-floor window, a 21-meter drop to the ground below. The Second Defenestration of Prague. Throwing leaders out of windows had become the Czech political language, and unlike the first one, which triggered a regional war, this one lit a fuse that Europe could not put out for 30 years. And then, the miracle. All 3 men survived. Catholic accounts at the time insisted it was a miracle, that angels or the Virgin Mary herself gently caught the men and lowered them to safety. Protestant accounts had a slightly less divine explanation. They landed in a large pile of straw and manure. Angels, or a really well-timed compost pile. Either way, all 3 men climbed out, humiliated, filthy, but alive, and fled straight to the emperor to report what had happened. And the Habsburgs did not like the message. What followed came on the 8th of November, 1620, the Battle of White Mountain, just outside Prague. 2 hours. That is how long it took the Habsburg army to crush the Protestant Bohemian forces. 2 hours to end a rebellion. For the Habsburgs, this wasn't just a military victory, it was an opportunity to make an example so severe that Bohemia would never attempt this again. Ferdinand II now held absolute power over Bohemia, and he ordered a reckoning. A list of 27 names. The men who had dared to throw his regents out of a window. The men who had dared to challenge the Holy Roman Emperor. Ferdinand had waited 2 years. The Bohemian nobles didn't stop at throwing 3 men out a window. They formalized their rebellion. They deposed the Habsburg king and elected their own, a Protestant noble named Frederick V. It was a direct challenge to Habsburg authority and to the entire religious balance of power across the continent. Other powers started taking sides. Catholic states rallied to the Habsburgs. Protestant states began eyeing an opportunity or a cause worth defending. What started as a regional dispute over religious rights in Bohemia became, within months, the opening act of the 30 Years' War, a conflict that would eventually pull in most of the major powers in Europe and kill somewhere between 4.5 and 8 million people. Before dawn on the 21st of June, 1621, a wooden scaffold was erected in the middle of Old Town Square. It was not a simple platform, it was a stage, a theatre. And Ferdinand II had written the script. The executioner was a man named Jan Hus, an Utrechtist, a moderate Hussite. He was chosen deliberately, a Czech killing Czechs on the emperor's orders. The humiliation was part of the punishment. At 5 o'clock in the morning, the first prisoner was brought forward. The first head fell. Over the next 7 hours, 26 more would follow. The order was deliberate. Commoners first, then the knights, then the nobles. Ferdinand wanted the nobles to watch. He wanted them to stand on that scaffold and see what was coming for them. Some were beheaded by the sword, a relatively merciful death. Some had their right hands cut off first. Some were hanged. The most brutal punishment was reserved for Jan Hus, the rector of Charles University. Hus had committed 2 unforgivable crimes. He had persuaded Hungary to break with the emperor, and he had written a treatise arguing that a tyrant could be overthrown by his people. For this, his tongue was cut out before his execution. Then he was beheaded. Then his body was quartered. Then the pieces were impaled on stakes and displayed around the city. The emperor wanted everyone to see what happened to men who wrote books. When it was over, 12 heads were placed in iron baskets and hung from the tower at the entrance to Charles Bridge. They hung there for 10 years. Every person who crossed the bridge saw them. Every merchant, every child, every visitor to Prague. 48 hours after the executions, Ferdinand issued the imperial constitution. It abolished the elective monarchy in Bohemia. The crown would now be hereditary, Habsburg forever. Protestantism was banned. German language was made equal to Czech. And the Reformation in Bohemia was crushed so thoroughly that by the end of the century, more than 3/4 of the population had been forcibly Catholicized. What was really executed that day was Bohemian independence. The kingdom would not fully recover for 300 years. 27 white crosses embedded in the cobblestones outside the Old Town Hall are still there till today. They're easy to walk over. Most people do. They were installed there much later, but now you know what they mean. This square isn't just a pretty backdrop for a photo next to the astronomical clock. It's the place where Habsburg authority delivered its final, brutal answer to the Czech rebellion that began, 3 years earlier, across the river, in a castle room, with 3 men, a window, and a pile of manure. Prague didn't just throw politicians out of windows twice, 200 years apart, for no reason. Each time, it was a city pushed to the edge of what they'd tolerate from power they didn't choose and couldn't hold accountable any other way. So, next time you're standing in Old Town Square, waiting for the clock to strike the hour, do what almost no one else does. Look down. I am the Prague historian. If you'd like to see more historical stories and legends from this astonishing Gothic city, hit subscribe. In the next episode, we will have a look at the legend of the church standing just behind the Old Town Square, where there is a real human cut-off arm hanging by the entrance door, displaying for over 500 years what happens when somebody attempts to steal from Virgin Mary.